Welcome to the High Quality CTE Programs of Study webinar series highlighting data and program improvement. I am Christina Kearns and serve as the Curriculum and Instruction Supervisor at Penna Career Center in Perrysburg, Ohio. Just a little bit about my professional experiences. I just finished my 25th year in education and have served Career Tech for over 11 years as both a teacher and an administrator. I was a math teacher for 16 years, and I've served 9 years as an administrator in several roles, assistant principal, principal, and curriculum and instruction. I was also a student of Career Tech in high school. I was in a 2-year marketing program in a comprehensive school in southern Mississippi. I've worked in 2 successful Ohio Career Tech centers. I've earned all of my degrees and completed further studies through Ohio University. I've earned a Bachelor of Science in Secondary Education in Mathematics, a master's degree in Educational Administration, and I've completed the Superintendent Licensure Program. I hold 3 active memberships: Ohio ACTE, the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development, and the National Career Pathways Network. I've received 2 awards from the Ohio ACTE, the Pacesetter Award in 2014 and the Ambassador Award in 2017. The Ambassador Award was based on my work with our Assessment Literacy Initiative, and I'll detail that in just a bit. And I was also featured in the Southern Regional Education Board's October 2018 Best Practices newsletter. So I'm really excited to share some of my experiences with you today. This micro-webinar is part of a larger series of webinars focused on the high-quality CTE Program of Study framework developed by the Association for Career and Technical Education. The framework is composed of 12 unique elements that characterize a quality program of study. This webinar specifically focuses on Element 12, Data and Program Improvement. And there are 9 criteria for high-quality data and program improvement. In this webinar, we'll focus on 3 of those. You'll notice they're highlighted in red. Specifically, we'll discuss stakeholders understand why data are collected and how they'll be used to support student success. Educators have access to valid and reliable aggregate data on all students in a program of study. And a process is formalized for the continuous use of data for program improvement, including addressing equity gaps. So today we'll spotlight 3 main objectives. First, we'll discuss the importance of data collection and its use to support student success. Then we'll investigate ways to provide educators valid and reliable aggregate data on all students in a program of study. And finally, we'll introduce a formalized model for the use of data collection for program improvement and gap closure. The first of the 3 targets the collection and the use of data. So as we navigate through these next slides, I'd really like you to make the following connection. Data equals understanding, and the goal is to turn data into information and information into insight. So many of you may be asking right about now, how can the collection and use of data improve me or my students? Or, if you're an administrator, how can it impact your teachers and students? Well, here are at least 6 reasons we should collect and use data. Certainly, you'll see the importance of many of them. Reason number 1, career-ready students. The first and obvious reason is that we want all of our students to be career-ready. Now, there's a vast difference between a job-ready student and a career-ready student. I know some may say that business and industry only needs workers prepared for a specific job or task, but what happens to the worker when that job or task is no longer needed, or if the job or task transitions to a more advanced level? Are we producing students who are critical thinkers that can easily adapt to the ever-changing world of work? Reason 2, best practice. Collection and analysis of assessment data is now considered as a professional skill related to effective instructional strategies. It is now an official tool that is expected to be in every teacher's toolbox to make valid and objective decisions, and it's also referenced as data-driven decision-making. Here are some examples of its application in your classroom: classroom management structures, differentiation of assessment items, and identifying where students are compared to where they need to be. So basically, we're more effective in meeting the needs of each student when we access and implement all of the useful best practice tools, especially this one referencing the collection and use of data. Reason 3, teacher evaluation requirement. Collection of and analysis of assessment data is also considered a professional requirement and is most assuredly represented on teacher evaluation rubrics across the United States. It primarily is surrounding the areas of assessment data and assessment of student learning. Reason 4, teacher effectiveness indicator. Data obtained through classroom assessment can help answer that fundamental question that every teacher asks of themselves. Am I truly effective with my teaching, and are my students learning what they need to learn? To clearly answer this question, time must be spent analyzing student work, and we'll talk more about this in upcoming slides. Reason number 5, school report card ratings. Penta Career Center's performance is measured by the state of Ohio via CTE school report cards. In Ohio specifically, our school report card is comprised of many components, but I want to highlight the achievement component. The achievement component has 2 parts: academic achievement, that's based on AIR tests, those are academics, and technical skill attainment, that's the result of performance on web exams. Web exams are the end-of-course assessments aligned to approved CTE courses in Ohio. We'll talk about the analysis of web exam data in just a few moments. And finally, reason number 6, CTE program reviews. Many states require career tech programs to engage in annual reviews to monitor program effectiveness. Further, the states also guide the annual review with quality program standards. Specifically in Ohio, legislation requires the Ohio Department of Education and the lead Career Tech Planning District to conduct an annual review for every CTE program within the planning district. The intent of the program review is to maximize the use of resources, improving the quality of CTE programs. We actually used all 6 of these reasons just discussed to justify and drive our assessment literacy initiative at Penta Career Center. Using a train-the-trainer model, CTE administrators led the teachers through quality professional development focused on specific best practices. Here's a summary of years 1 through 4. So you'll see in years 1 and 2, teachers determined the depths of knowledge levels of the course standards. Then they created rigorous assessment items aligned to those DOK levels of their standards. And then they had to make sure that they incorporated stretch when creating the assessment items so that all students may demonstrate growth. Then they aligned their instruction to student learning and student assessment to those DOK levels of the course standards, and they created assessment maps. So basically, years 1 and 2 were the prep years geared towards collecting and capturing valid and reliable data. Years 3 and 4, the teachers implemented the rigorous assessment items that were created. They reflected on that implementation and the effectiveness of the items that they created. Then they refined their assessment items aligned to the DOK levels. They spent significant time analyzing their web exam data. Again, I'm going to touch on that in just a moment. And they implemented a structure for student data tracking. Now, that's both individual student data tracking and whole class data tracking. It was used to collect valid and reliable data and also formative assessment data to gauge teacher effectiveness and student performance. So basically, years 3 and 4 focused on the collection and analysis of valid and reliable data. Now, in year 4 specifically, teachers had to rethink their lesson design. We had them create and implement detailed lesson plans for 3 significant deficient course standards. This coming August 2019 will mark the beginning of year 5 of our Assessment Literacy Initiative. I'll touch on an overview of that towards the end of the micro-webinar. So just a note, although we did our best as a district to collect and analyze data from a systematic approach, we have to be very cautious in regards to decision-making based on that data analysis because of certain types of data that were collected. For example, we spent 2 years training the teachers on the creation of rigorous assessment items aligned to those DOK levels of their core standards and incorporating stretch to make the learning more meaningful for the students. But the data collected could still generate invalid and unreliable results depending on the consistency of implementation from teacher to teacher and the types of assessments that were used to collect the data. So does this make sense? Hopefully it does. So this leads to the discussion of valid and reliable aggregate data, which is the second of the 3 criteria. So now that we understand the importance of the collection and use of data, we need to investigate sources of valid and reliable data that are already available to us. So as mentioned earlier, Ohio legislation requires the Ohio Department of Education and the lead district of each secondary career tech planning district to conduct an annual review for every CTE program within the planning district. To monitor compliance of the standards associated with that CTE program review, the Ohio Department of Education releases pathway report cards on November 1st of each school year. The pathway report card is comprised of 3 performance indicators: the technical skill attainment, the technical skill assessment participation rate, and the post-program placement. If you look on the pathway report card, they are columns 4, 5, and 6. By the way, this template design is not the official pathway report card format. I've added most of the items to make it more informative for our teachers and administrators. So let me take some time to talk about technical skill attainment, participation rate, and post-program placement. The technical skill attainment measures the proportion of concentrators passing technical assessments. And remember, in our state, they're called web exams. These assessments are designed to measure the skills and knowledge learned in a student's CTE program. The second one, technical skill assessment participation rate, is the proportion of concentrators who left school and programs with available assessments, who were assessed, and reported with valid scores. So basically, this indicator makes sure that all students in the program are taking the web exams. And we typically just reference this indicator as the participation rate, as you'll see here. And finally, the post-program placement, it measures the proportion of concentrators who are employed in an apprenticeship, joined the military, or enrolled in post-secondary education or advanced training in the 6 months after leaving school. So of all the 3 performance indicators, which do you suspect offers the richest, valid, and reliable data to improve instructional effectiveness and student success? You got it, the technical skill attainment. But before I detail the use of the technical skill attainment and proceed any further in the discussion, there are 2 significant items to consider. First, the pathway report card data is not real-time data. It lags almost 2 school years behind because of the post-program placement data is collected 6 months after graduation, and it's not officially reported until 1 year after graduation. Further, career tech centers don't even receive the pathway report cards until November 1st of the following school year. So if you look at columns 1, 2, and 3 on the pathway report card, you'll see column 1 indicates the CTE Quality Program Review fiscal year. Column 2 shows the associated school year. And column 3 lists the release date of the pathway report card. So if you look under column 1 and find the CTE Quality Program Review fiscal year 2019, you'll see that it's linked to the 2017-2018 school year. Now notice the third column. It says the data won't be released to the schools until November 1st of 2019. Again, that's almost 2 school years later. By the way, and this is great news for us, the Ohio Department of Education is processing solutions to address this item. And then the second issue the pathway report card doesn't indicate specific program performance. For example, in the pathway shown here, this is the DE pathway, Mechanical, Electrical, and Plumbing Systems. That's on the red bar. It has 2 programs associated with it, Construction Electricity and Heating and Air Conditioning Technology. You'll see that noted at the very bottom of the chart. I'll explain later what we did at Penna Career Center to capture specific program performance. So just to recap, I talked about the process our teachers engaged in to create and implement rigorous assessment items aligned to those DOK levels of their course standards. Then I just mentioned data provided to us by the Ohio Department of Education via the program report card data. So of the 2 sources mentioned so far, which is the most valid and reliable? Yes, that pathway report card data. So that leads to the program report card data. What gets measured gets changed, and this is very true. So we started noticing significant improvements in technical skill attainment performance once we did 3 things at Penna. The first thing we did, we analyzed that technical skill attainment pathway data. That's the richest, valid, and reliable data. Then we disaggregated the data down to the program level. So we were very detailed to divide it by program and then by teacher if there were more than one, if there were more than one teacher in the program, and then we even divided it down by supervisor. And then finally, we made informed decisions based on that data. Moreover, we saw an average increase of 19.89%, so almost 20% increase in overall performance on all CTE programs just this last reporting year. This analysis process led to the creation of Penna Career Center's program report card that you'll see here. In this example, the report card details specific performance by year for a program associated with that DE pathway that I just shared. So even though it's blocked from view, the program report card is specific to supervisor, to program, and teacher. Furthermore, even though we don't have it listed, the CTE teachers have access to all of the individual student data linked to the official report card results. Also, remember just a moment ago when I mentioned that lack of real-time data and the downside of viewing results from almost 2 school years ago? Well, we started tracking current data of student performance, and we referenced it as anticipated data, as it shows on the program report card. So by now, you may be thinking, where does this technical skill attainment data come from, and how can I use it to make informed decisions about my instruction and my student performance? What does that process even look like? Well, let's take a look. As mentioned on the previous slide, the richest, valid, and reliable data comes from the performance indicator technical skill attainment. And remember, in Ohio, the technical skill attainment measures the proportion of students passing the web exams, and the web exams measure the skills and knowledge learned in a student's CTE program. Therefore, as part of years 3 and 4 of our Assessment Literacy Initiative, we crafted specific professional development opportunities following that train-the-trainer model to lead our CTE teachers through the process of analyzing their web exam course performance by outcome. In this specific example, you can see the program students as a whole were not proficient in 5 of the 7 outcomes. The deficient areas are highlighted in yellow, and they barely met the performance standard on 2.01. And just a note, the performance standard set for this specific web exam is 63%. The teachers were then asked to view the performance on all of the web exam courses that their students tested in to see if there were any patterns in performance on the outcomes. Now, as a parenthetical note, it's very common for all or most of our assessments within the pathway to contain repeated outcomes. However, just know that the questions will vary depending on the focus of the content. And the teachers continued this practice throughout the course of the year. Now, to dive deeper into the analysis of the data the administrators led teachers through the analysis of individual student performance on the web exam outcomes. In this example, you can see that student A passed the course assessment but did not meet the performance standard in 2 of the 7 outcomes. Now look at student B. Student B did not pass the course assessment and only met 2 performance standards out of the 7. This is extremely useful data for the teacher. Further analysis will indicate patterns of specific areas of strengths and deficiencies. The teacher can use this valid, reliable data as a guide for data-driven decision-making that I've already touched on before, specifically in regards to student remediation through individual or small group instruction, retesting, ongoing feedback, etc. In fact, for our school, this course analysis led to the lesson plan revision that I talked about that we specifically did in our Year 4 of Assessment Literacy Initiative, and also that student data tracking and frequent feedback to students on their performance. By giving the valid and reliable data to the teachers and asking them to analyze the data and finding holes in their systems and implementing the student data tracking, we've seen significant program improvements. Schools can achieve higher levels of teacher effectiveness by empowering their teachers through this practice of data analysis. This has definitely worked for Pinna Career Center, and I hope it works for you as well. The final of the 3 criteria targets a formalized data collection model, and this is one of my favorites. Brand new for the 2019-20 school year and the foundation for Year 5 of our Assessment Literacy Initiative is the introduction and implementation of a formalized data collection model, and we're calling it the Pinna Career Center Program Dashboard. The dashboard will be created in Google Sheets, and each of the CT teachers will have one. The dashboard is a means for data collection, tracking, and analysis of that valid and reliable data. The following are located on separate tabs in the dashboard. So we're going to have web exam course performance by student, web exam course analysis, program report card, a pathway report card, and gap closing data, such as associate school, gender, ethnicity, disadvantagement, students with disabilities, and 504s. Other tabs will include a home page or a landing page that gives them access to important forms, calendars, and handbooks. Then they'll have a course information tab with links to the specific career field homepage on the Ohio Department of Education website, cost-free college credit opportunities and associated institutions of higher learning, industry-recognized credentialing data, work-based learning data and experiences. Brand new this year, we're starting the WIN program, and it's a focus on forming and implementing solid success skills for students. It'll contain post-program follow-up data, CTSOs, advisory committee information, teacher evaluation tracking, and equipment and supply orders. Several of the tabs will serve as tools for additional data collection, which is really nice. So you can tell that we've really focused our efforts on providing our teachers and administrators with many ways to collect, track, and analyze reliable and valid data for all students in the program of study. So before we conclude, I would like to highlight the available gap closing data for just a moment. So if you'll notice the light blue heading that says gap closing data regarding student demographics, the available gap closing data will help teachers engage in their own gap closing analysis to determine if they're meeting the performance expectations for all students in their program, but especially our most vulnerable populations of students. Teachers can simply filter their web exam tracking by specific student populations and analyze performance, search for gaps in populations of students, etc. Just remember, the deeper you dig, the more treasures you'll find. So it's imperative that you analyze individual student data to search for gaps and root causes of deficiencies. Your priority as an educator is to guarantee that all students in your program are meeting the performance expectations, again, especially our most vulnerable populations of students, regardless of gender, ethnicity, disadvantagement, or disability. Now, if gaps do exist, you need to engage in the following cycle that's proven to be effective. First, analyze specific student performance data. Then look for trends in student performance and those populations of students. Research and implement best practice strategies. Rethink lesson design like what we did, and instruction and assessments for the subgroups. Continue with that student data tracking, both individual and whole class tracking. Provide frequent feedback to students on their progress, and collect ongoing, valid, and reliable data to monitor progress. At any time, you can jump in the cycle and repeat. So in summary, we've discussed the importance of data collection and its use to support instructional effectiveness and student success. We've investigated many ways to provide valid and reliable data on all students in a program of study and analyze the data to inform lesson design, instruction, and student assessment. And we've introduced a formalized data collection model for program improvement and gap closure that we're going to use at Pinner Career Center. So I have to say, we are really excited about the introduction and implementation of the program dashboard. Providing our teachers 24/7 access to more and richer data, coupled with the capability to visualize it in more meaningful ways, can really transform their lesson planning, instructional practices, and student assessment. By automating much of their data management for them, they'll have more time to focus on specific student needs and, in essence, improve their overall effectiveness as a teacher. So we trust that you see the benefits associated with these three criteria to ultimately increase the effectiveness of the CTE programs offered through your school. This webinar is one of a series supporting ACTE's high-quality CTE initiatives. ACTE has developed evidence-based criteria defining a quality CTE program of study. They also have tools and resources, including a self-evaluation instrument. For more on the high-quality CTE initiative, you can participate in sessions during the ACTE Vision Conference. You can apply for awards that recognize quality programs of study, or you can even visit the website shown at the bottom of the slide. Thank you for joining me in this webinar. I wish you the best as you navigate through your data and career tech program improvement journey. And as always, go out and do great things.